The oil lamps of the Winslow mansion burned low in the drawing room, casting shadows that danced across the silk wallpaper imported from Paris. Amelia Winslow sat perfectly still in her ivory gown, hands folded in her lap as her mother had taught her, while the grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the final hours of her freedom. "You'll learn to appreciate Mr. Halstead's qualities," her mother, Margaret Winslow, said for the 100th time that week. The older woman's fingers worked nervously at her pearl necklace. "He's established, respected. You'll want for nothing." Amelia kept her gaze on the window, watching dust devils dance across the main street of New Grayston. Want for nothing except love, she thought, but held her tongue. At 22, she'd learned that her opinions carried less weight than the china dolls lining her childhood bedroom shelf. Her father, Judge William Winslow, hadn't bothered with such platitudes. His message had been clear. Marry Vernon Halstead, secure the family's financial future, or watch everything they'd built crumble. The judge's gambling debts had grown like tumbleweeds in drought season, and Halstead's money was the only rain in sight. "The dressmaker will arrive within the hour for your final fitting," her mother continued. Vernon specifically requested Brussels lace for the veil, so thoughtful of him. Thoughtful? Amelia nearly laughed. Vernon Halstead was 63 years old, with hands that reminded her of vulture talons and breath that reeked of cigars and decay. During their supervised courtship meetings, he'd spoken only of his bank's expansion plans and the sons she would give him. Never once had he asked about her love of horses or the books she read by candlelight when sleep wouldn't come. A knock at the door interrupted her dark thoughts. Their housemaid, a young Mexican woman named Rosa, entered with downcast eyes. "Senor Halstead has arrived, Senora. He wishes to speak with Judge Winslow in the study." Margaret's face brightened. "How wonderful. Perhaps he's brought another gift. Last week's diamond brooch was exquisite." Amelia watched her mother sweep from the room, leaving behind the cloying scent of rose water. She counted to 50 before rising, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. The walls of the mansion seemed to press closer with each passing day, and tomorrow they would close in completely. She moved through the hallway like a ghost, her silk slippers silent on the Turkish runner. The study door stood slightly ajar, and she pressed herself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. Her father's voice carried clearly. "Terms are more than generous. Halstead, you'll have my daughter and a 30% stake in the railroad consortium." 40%. Vernon's voice was like gravel in a tin pan. "Your debts have grown since our last conversation. Judge, the Cattlemen's Association isn't known for its patience." 40, then. Her father's defeat was palpable. "But the wedding happens tomorrow as planned. No delays?" "Agreed. Though I trust you've explained the expectations to your daughter. I won't tolerate any of that modern nonsense about women's temperaments. A firm hand is what's needed." Amelia knows her duty. "Good. I've buried 2 wives already. Judge, both gave me daughters. Useless creatures. This time, I'll have sons. Or know the reason why. The doctor assures me the fault wasn't mine." Amelia's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Through the crack in the door, she saw Vernon lean forward, his pale eyes glinting in the lamplight. "I've paid a high price for your daughter, Winslow. She'll earn her keep, one way or another. My ranch hands break the wildest mustangs within a week. A society girl shouldn't take nearly as long." Her father said nothing, merely poured another whiskey with hands that shook slightly. The clink of glass on glass sounded like shackles closing. Amelia backed away, her heart hammering against her corset stays. The hallway spun around her as she fled to her room, locking the door behind her. She pressed her forehead against the cool wood, fighting the urge to scream. The wedding dress hung on her wardrobe like a shroud, yards of white satin and Alençon lace that had cost more than most families saw in a year. She stared at it with mounting revulsion. Tomorrow, she would walk down the aisle of St. Sebastian's Church, smile for the photographers from the territorial newspaper, and sign her life away to a man who spoke of her like livestock. Unless... The thought came unbidden, dangerous as a rattlesnake in tall grass. She moved to her window, gazing out at the vast expanse of desert beyond the town limits. Somewhere out there, people lived free. Somewhere out there, women weren't sold to pay their father's debts. She thought of her cousin Elizabeth, who'd run away 3 years prior with a traveling photographer. The family never spoke of her, except in whispers tinged with scandal and shame. But Elizabeth's last letter, smuggled to Amelia through Rosa, had spoken of happiness, of choice. The sun began its descent, painting the sky the color of blood and amber. Amelia watched the freight trains preparing for their nighttime departures, loaded with silver ore and dreams of fortune. She knew the schedule by heart: the 11:15 to Tucson, the midnight special to California. Her decision crystallized like frost on glass, moving with newfound purpose. She pulled out her smallest carpetbag from beneath the bed. She packed only essentials: 2 plain dresses, her mother's gold locket, the small roll of bills she'd hidden behind her poetry books. Her hands hesitated over the leather-bound journal where she'd recorded her hopes and fears. It went into the bag. The house settled into evening routines. She heard her parents retire to their separate bedrooms, the servants finishing their duties in the kitchen. By 10 o'clock, silence reigned. Amelia changed into her darkest dress, pinning her hair severely back. She wrapped herself in a plain woolen cloak, anonymous as any working woman. Her hands trembled as she reached for the final item, her father's pearl-handled derringer, taken from his study weeks ago and hidden beneath her mattresses. She'd never fired a gun, but its weight in her pocket provided cold comfort. The window opened silently, well-oiled from her childhood escapes to ride horses in the moonlight. She dropped her carpetbag first, then gathered her skirts and climbed through, grateful for the trellis that had supported her secret adventures since she was 12. The streets of New Grayston lay empty, save for the occasional drunk stumbling from Murphy's saloon. Amelia kept to the shadows, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would wake the town. Every barking dog made her freeze. Every shifting shadow sent panic through her veins. The train yard sprawled before her like a mechanical graveyard, all iron and steam and possibility. She crept between the massive engines, reading the chalk markings that indicated their destinations. The California Special sat on track 3, already building steam for its midnight departure. She climbed aboard the last freight car, finding it packed with wooden crates marked mining equipment and canvas-covered shapes that could have been anything. The air smelled of motor oil and fresh sawdust. She wedged herself between 2 large crates, pulling a canvas sheet over her hiding spot. Time crawled. Every sound made her certain that Vernon's men had discovered her absence, that her father would appear with the sheriff in tow. She clutched the carpetbag to her chest, feeling the outline of the derringer through the fabric. At 11:55, the train whistle shrieked its warning. The great engine coughed to life, and with a tremendous lurch, they began to move. Amelia bit her lip to keep from crying out as the crates shifted around her, through a gap in the car's siding. She watched New Grayston disappear into the darkness. The Winslow mansion on the hill, the church where she should have been married, the cemetery where her grandparents lay, all of it fading like a bad dream upon waking. She thought of the morning's discovery, the empty bedroom, the wedding dress left behind like shed skin. Would her mother weep? Would her father rage? Would Vernon Halstead send men after her, or simply find another desperate family with a daughter to sell? It didn't matter. She was no longer Amelia Winslow, society bride. She was just another shadow fleeing through the night, carrying nothing but hope and the wild notion that somewhere beyond the horizon, a woman could belong to herself alone. The train picked up speed, wheels singing against the rails. In her pocket, the weight of the derringer reminded her that freedom came with a price, and she might yet have to pay it. But as the stars wheeled overhead and the desert stretched endless before them, Amelia closed her eyes and smiled for the first time in months. She was running toward the unknown, and it felt like flying. The jarring halt of the train jolted Amelia from her fitful sleep. Dawn light filtered through the gaps in the freight car, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Her body ached from the night spent wedged between crates, and her throat felt raw from the sawdust-laden air. She peered through a crack in the wooden siding. They'd stopped at a water station somewhere in the Arizona territory, judging by the red rocks and sparse vegetation. Railroad workers moved about, filling the engine's massive tank while the conductor checked his manifest. Amelia had just begun to relax when the canvas above her head suddenly yanked away. Well, what have we here? The man towering over her looked like something carved from the desert itself, all hard angles and weathered planes. A scar ran from his left cheekbone down to his jaw, pale against sun-darkened skin. His eyes were the color of winter steel, and they regarded her with a mixture of amusement and cold calculation. He wore a long leather duster over dark clothes, and the Colt .45 on his hip had seen better days. But it was the smell that made her recoil. Leather, gunpowder, and beneath it all, the metallic tang of dried blood. "But please," Amelia stammered, pressing back against the crates. I didn't steal a ride on the Southern Pacific?" The man's voice was rough as sandpaper. "That's a hanging offense in some parts, miss, though they usually just throw you off the moving train and let the desert sort things out." He reached down, and Amelia flinched, but he merely picked up a wanted poster that had fallen from his coat. Her eyes widened as she recognized the sketch, her own face, though the artist had made her look older, harder. "Runaway bride," the poster declared. "Amelia Winslow, age 22, auburn hair, green eyes, $500 reward for safe return to Vernon Halstead, New Grayston, $500. The man whistled low. "Must be some special kind of woman to fetch that price. Though I've brought in murderers for less." "You're a bounty hunter." It wasn't a question. "Colt Devlin, at your service." He touched the brim of his hat mockingly. "And you, Miss Winslow, are what we in the trade call easy money." Amelia's hand crept toward her pocket where the Derringer rested, but Colt's eyes tracked the movement, faster than she could blink. His own hand moved, and suddenly she was staring down the barrel of his revolver. Now, let's not make this complicated. Hand over whatever iron you're carrying, nice and slow." With trembling fingers, she withdrew the pearl-handled gun. Colt plucked it from her grip, examining it with professional interest. Pretty little thing, like its owner. He tucked it into his belt. "Now, here's how this goes. You come quiet like, I deliver you to Halstead, collect my reward, and everybody goes home happy. Except you, I suppose. But that's not really my concern. Please." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You don't understand. He's a monster. He's already killed 2 wives. Not my business. Miss, I hunt, I deliver, I get paid. Simple as that." The train whistle shrieked, signaling imminent departure. Colt hauled her to her feet, his grip firm but not cruel on her arm. "Come on, we're getting off here." "No!" Amelia struggled against him. "I'd rather die than go back." Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of emotion quickly suppressed. "Plenty of folks say that. Few mean it." As he dragged her toward the car's door, Amelia spotted his saddlebags in the corner, a rifle propped beside them. He was traveling alone, using the train like she was. The realization gave her desperate hope. "I can pay you," she blurted out. Colt paused. "With what? That fancy dress you're wearing? Already saw your carpet bag. Nothing in there but clothes and dreams." "I can work, cook, clean, mend clothes. You must need help on the trail. I work alone." "For how long?" She seized on the opening. "A man like you, always moving, always hunting. When's the last time you had a decent meal that didn't come from a can? When's the last time someone washed the blood from your clothes?" His jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me. Lady, I know you're considering it." She met his gaze steadily. "Otherwise, we'd already be off this train." The whistle shrieked again. The train lurched, beginning to move. Colt muttered a curse that would have scandalized her mother. "1 week," he said finally. "You cook, you clean, you keep your mouth shut. After that, you're on your own. But if you slow me down or cause trouble, I won't. I swear it. He released her arm. Gather your things, and if you try to run, remember, I can track a Apache through a sandstorm. A society girl leaves trails like a buffalo in mud. The next hours passed in tense silence as the train rolled through increasingly desolate territory. Colt cleaned his weapons with methodical precision while Amelia huddled in her corner, acutely aware of his presence. He was nothing like the men of her acquaintance. No polish, no pretense, just dangerous competence wrapped in leather and scars. They disembarked at a town that barely deserved the name, a collection of weathered buildings huddled around a dirt main street. Colt led her to a livery stable where his horse waited, a massive black gelding with eyes as suspicious as its master's. Ever ridden astride? He asked, saddling the animal. Of course not. It's improper. She stopped, realizing how foolish that sounded given her circumstances. Propriety'll get you killed out here. Hike up those skirts or I'll do it for you. Face burning, Amelia gathered her dress and clambered awkwardly onto the horse behind him. The intimacy of it, her arms necessarily around his waist, her body pressed against his back, made her stomach flutter with an emotion she couldn't name. They rode out into the desert as the sun climbed toward its zenith. The landscape was alien to her, all red rock and twisted Joshua trees, empty sky and endless horizons. Colt navigated by landmarks invisible to her eyes, following trails that might have been made by animals or ancient peoples. Where are we going? She ventured after hours of silence. Meeting a man in Perdition, town about 2 days north. What kind of man? The kind with a bounty on his head. She fell silent again, but her mind raced. 2 days to prove her worth, to convince him to let her stay longer. 2 days before she'd be alone in this vast, unforgiving land. They made camp as the sun set, in a hollow between 2 massive boulders that provided shelter from the wind. Amelia watched Colt work, gathering scrub for a fire, checking the perimeter for snakes, every movement efficient and practiced. There's a stream about 50 yards that way, he said, pointing. Don't go alone, don't go unarmed, and don't take too long. She took the canteen and a bar of lye soap from his pack, acutely aware of the Smith & Wesson he handed her. This is bigger than my Derringer. Your Derringer's a toy. This'll actually stop something. Point and squeeze. Don't jerk the trigger. The stream was barely a trickle, but the cold water felt like heaven on her dusty skin. She washed as best she could, then returned to find Colt had laid out bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire and was heating something in a battered pot. Beans and salt pork, he announced. Hope you weren't expecting fancy. It smells wonderful. And it did, after a day of fear and flight. She ate ravenously, aware of his eyes on her. So, he said finally, Vernon Halstead, big man in New Grayston, owns the bank, half the land, probably the law too. What's a girl like you running from a catch like that for? You said it wasn't your business. It wasn't when I was planning to turn you in. Now you're cooking my supper, so I figure I got a right to know. She stared into the fire. He bought me. Like you'd buy a horse or a rifle? My father owed him money, so I was the payment. Common enough story. Is it? She looked up sharply. Is it common for a man to brag about breaking women like wild horses? To speak casually of 2 dead wives and the sons he demands? Colt was quiet for a moment. Some men shouldn't have power over anything that breathes. But you'd have taken me back to him. For money. Yes. No apology. No excuse. Just flat acknowledgement. How do you live with yourself? His smile was sharp as a blade. Whiskey helps. And staying alive in this country means making hard choices. You'll learn that, if you survive long enough. That night, she lay awake listening to the foreign sounds of the desert. Coyotes howling, wind singing through stone, creatures rustling in the brush. Across the dying fire. Colt slept with one hand on his gun, hat pulled low over his face. Even in sleep, he looked dangerous. She thought of her soft bed in New Grayston, of safety and certainty traded for this, hard ground and questionable company, death potentially waiting in every shadow. But when she finally dozed, her dreams were of endless skies and freedom sharp as desert air, and a scarred face that might have been handsome once, before the world carved its story in flesh and bone. The gunshot cracked through the desert air like thunder. Amelia's horse reared, nearly throwing her as Colt wheeled his mount around, rifle already in his hands. "Get down!" he barked, sliding from his saddle in one fluid motion. She tumbled gracelessly to the ground, heart hammering as another bullet whined past, striking sparks from the rocks behind them. They'd been following a narrow canyon trail toward perdition when the ambush came. "Friends of yours?" she gasped, pressing herself against a boulder. "Jake Hollister." Colt's voice was grimly amused as he checked his ammunition. "Guess he heard I was coming." Through the dust and confusion, she saw them, 3 riders positioned on the canyon rim, their rifles glinting in the afternoon sun. The man Colt had been hunting had become the hunter. "Stay here," Colt ordered, then darted across open ground toward better cover. Gunfire erupted, bullets chasing his heels. He dove behind a fallen log, splinters exploding around him as lead struck wood. Amelia watched in terror as Colt returned fire, his movements economical, deadly. One of the riders cried out and toppled from his horse, but the others kept shooting, and Colt was pinned, unable to advance or retreat. The Smith & Wesson lay heavy in her shaking hands. She'd never shot at anything living, never imagined she would. But as she watched Colt's position being steadily chipped away by gunfire, something cold and determined settled in her chest. Her father had taught her to shoot clay pigeons when she was younger, before propriety demanded she put away such unladylike pursuits. The memory of his instruction came back now. Breathe steady. Squeeze, don't pull. Let the gun be an extension of your arm. One of the riders had moved, seeking a better angle on Colt's position. From where Amelia crouched, she had a clear shot at his silhouette. Time seemed to slow. She raised the revolver, sighted down the barrel, and fired. The recoil knocked her backward. The man on the rim jerked, clutched his shoulder, and fell from sight. His partner turned, searching for this new threat, giving Colt the opening he needed. 2 quick shots from the bounty hunter's rifle, and the last ambusher was down. Silence descended on the canyon, broken only by the ringing in her ears. Amelia stared at the gun in her hands, at the small wisp of smoke rising from its barrel. Her whole body shook. "You hit!" Colt was suddenly beside her, hands running over her arms, checking for wounds. No, I shot him. I shot a man. You saved my life." His steel eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Respect, maybe even warmth. "That was a hell of a shot for a society girl. Is he dead?" "Probably not. Winged him good, though." He helped her to her feet, steadying her when her knees threatened to buckle. "Come on, we need to move before they regroup." They rode hard for the next hour, leaving the canyon behind for open desert. Amelia clung to Colt's back, still shaking from the aftermath of violence. She could smell the gunpowder on his coat, feel the tension in his muscles. As dusk approached, they found shelter in an abandoned prospector's shack, little more than 4 walls and a partial roof. Colt tended the horses while Amelia sat on a broken crate, staring at her hands. "First kill's always the hardest," he said, entering with their supplies. "I don't know if I killed him." "First blood. Then, point is, you crossed a line today. There's no going back from it. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You could have let them kill me, taken your chances with Hollister's gang. Some would call that the smarter play." She looked up at him. "Is that what you would have done?" He was quiet for a moment, building a fire in the old stone hearth. "Once upon a time, maybe, before I learned that some people are worth taking a bullet for." "Who did you learn that from?" His jaw tightened. "Someone who's not around anymore." That night, the cold was brutal. Desert winters were nothing like the mild seasons she'd known in New Grayston. Despite the fire, she shivered in her bedroll, teeth chattering. She heard Colt sigh in the darkness. "Come here," he said gruffly. "What?" "You're freezing. I can hear your bones rattling from over here. Come share warmth before you catch your death." She hesitated, propriety warring with survival. But as another gust of wind whistled through the gaps in the walls, survival won. She dragged her bedroll next to his, acutely aware of every inch between them. "Closer," he ordered. "Body heat doesn't work through air." She moved until her back pressed against his chest. His arm came around her waist, purely practical, but her breath caught anyway. He was warm as a furnace, solid as the mountains. "Better?" "Yes," she whispered. They lay in silence, but she could feel his breathing, steady and deep. Could smell leather and smoke and something uniquely him, her body. Traitor that it was, relaxed into his warmth. "Tell me about her," she said softly. "The one who's not around anymore." For so long he didn't answer that she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, quietly, "Sarah, my wife. Married her when I was 22, full of plans and dreams. Had a little ranch outside Tombstone, nothing fancy but it was ours." Amelia held her breath, afraid to break the spell of his confession. "Apache raids were bad that year. I was in town getting supplies when they hit. By the time I got back," his arm tightened unconsciously around her. "Found her in the barn. They'd taken their time with her. Oh, Colt, I'm so sorry." "Buried her under the cottonwood where we used to sit evenings. Sold the land. Started hunting men for money. Figured if I couldn't protect what mattered, might as well get paid for the violence." "Is that why you smell of blood? Because you're trying to wash hers away?" He was quiet again. Then, so soft she almost missed it. "Maybe." Something shifted between them in the darkness. The practical arrangement for warmth became something else, an acknowledgement of shared pain, of understanding. His thumb traced a small circle on her stomach through the fabric of her dress. Possibly unconscious, possibly not. "What was she like?" Amelia asked. "Strong, gentle, could shoot the eye out of a rattler at 50 paces, but cried when we had to put down a lame horse. Had this laugh that—" He stopped. "You remind me of her sometimes, not in looks, but in spirit, that fire that won't be tamed." "Is that why you didn't take me back to Halstead?" "Part of it. Also because you were right. Some men shouldn't own anything that breathes. And because—" He hesitated. "Because I'm tired of being the kind of man who'd trade a woman's freedom for gold." She turned in his arms to face him. In the dying firelight, the scar on his face looked like a silver river. Without thinking, she traced it with her fingertip. "How?" "Knife fight in Tucson. Man didn't appreciate me bringing in his brother." He caught her hand, but didn't push it away. "You should sleep. Long ride tomorrow." But sleep was impossible with his face inches from hers, with the weight of what had passed between them. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the war between wanting and wisdom. "Amelia," he said, her name a warning. "I know," she whispered, but she didn't move away. The kiss was inevitable as sunrise, soft at first, almost hesitant, as if both were remembering how to be gentle, then deeper, hungrier, fueled by loneliness and danger and the strange intimacy of violence shared. His hand tangled in her hair, and she pressed closer, feeling alive in a way she never had in her sanitized former life. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. "This is a bad idea," he murmured. "The worst," she agreed, and kissed him again. Later, wrapped in blankets and each other, she felt the ice around her heart begin to thaw. Outside, coyotes sang to the moon. Inside, 2 damaged souls found temporary shelter from their ghosts, knowing morning would bring its own reckonings but unable to care. "What happens when we reach perdition?" she asked against his chest. "I don't know," he admitted. "But you're not going back to Halstead. Not while I'm breathing." It was the closest thing to a promise either of them could make in a world where bullets flew like prayers and tomorrow was never guaranteed. But for tonight, in this broken shelter under distant stars, it was enough. The first snow began falling as they climbed into the mountains. Fat flakes that clung to Amelia's eyelashes and dusted Colt's black hat white. They'd been riding for 3 days since the ambush, pushing higher into territory that grew more treacherous with each mile. "Storm's coming," Colt said, scanning the darkening sky. "Need to find shelter fast." Through the swirling snow, Amelia glimpsed a structure, barely visible against the mountainside. An old cabin, built of heavy logs and tucked beneath an overhang of rock. Colt guided their horses toward it, fighting against wind that tried to tear them from the narrow trail. The cabin had been abandoned for years, but its walls were solid. Colt kicked in the door, gun drawn, checking corners for unwelcome occupants, finding only dust and mice droppings. He nodded for Amelia to enter. "This'll do," he said, already moving to check the stone fireplace. "Get the bedrolls. I'll see to the horses." By the time he returned, she had a fire crackling in the hearth and had found several cans of peaches and tomatoes in a cupboard, miraculously intact. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters like skeletal fingers. "Could be stuck here for days," Colt observed, securing the door with a heavy bar. "Hope you don't tire of my company, Easy." "I think I can manage," she said softly, remembering the warmth of his arms 2 nights before. They'd been careful since then, maintaining distance during the days, but at night, he shed his snow-covered duster, and she saw him wince. Blood seeped through his shirt near his ribs. "You're hurt." She moved to him quickly. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Scratch from Hollister's boys. Nothing serious. Let me see." He started to protest, but she was already unbuttoning his shirt with efficient fingers. The wound was more than a scratch, a furrow where a bullet had grazed his ribs, angry and inflamed. "This needs cleaning," she said firmly. "Sit." She heated water over the fire, tore strips from her petticoat for bandages. Her hands shook slightly as she cleaned the wound, acutely aware of his bare chest, the map of scars that told stories of violence survived, an old bullet wound near his shoulder, knife marks across his stomach, the body of a man who'd lived hard and fought harder. "Where'd you learn doctoring?" he asked through gritted teeth as she applied whiskey to the wound. "My mother believed all proper ladies should know basic medical care, though I doubt she imagined I'd be using it like this." She wrapped the bandage carefully around his torso. "There, try not to tear it open again." "Yes, ma'am." His eyes held that warmth she'd glimpsed before, quickly shuddered. "Thank you." The storm raged for 2 days. They passed the time with cards. He taught her poker. She taught him whist. She told him about her life in New Grayston, the suffocating expectations, the endless teas and social calls that felt like dying by degrees. He spoke sparingly of his past, but she pieced together fragments: an orphaned childhood, time in the cavalry, the brief happiness with Sarah before it all went dark. On the second night, fever took hold of him. The wound had festered despite her care, and he tossed in delirium, calling for Sarah, for brothers in arms long dead. Amelia bathed his burning skin with cool water, held him when tremors racked his body. "Don't leave," he muttered, fingers clutching at her dress. "Please don't leave." "I'm here," she soothed. "I'm not going anywhere." In his fever, defenses fell away. He spoke of things that made her weep: children gunned down in range wars, women left widowed by his gun, the weight of lives taken settling like stones in his chest. She held him through it all. This dangerous man reduced to raw humanity. When the fever broke near dawn, he woke to find her curled against him, her hand on his heart as if she could protect it through touch alone. His fingers traced her sleeping face with impossible gentleness. She stirred, eyes opening to meet his. "You're better, thanks to you." His voice was rough. "Amelia, She silenced him with a kiss, soft and desperate. When they broke apart, tears tracked down her cheeks. "What's wrong?" "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. "And that terrifies me more than any gunfight." He pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. "You think you're scared? I'm a bounty hunter with more enemies than friends, blood on my hands that won't wash clean. You deserve better than what I can offer." "What can you offer?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Truth, protection as long as I'm breathing. A life that won't be easy but will be yours to choose. And this heart, damaged as it is." She lifted her head to look at him. "That's more than anyone's ever offered me." This time when they came together, it was with full understanding of what they were choosing. She helped him remove the bandages, careful of his healing wound. He unwrapped her from layers of propriety with reverent hands. In the firelight, scarred skin met pampered softness, two worlds colliding in desperate need. He was gentle despite his rough edges, attentive to her inexperience. She was bold despite her sheltered past, meeting his passion with her own. They moved together like a prayer, like a promise, while outside the snow continued to fall. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her ear. "What happens now?" she asked. Now we survive. Get through this storm. Stay ahead of whoever Halstead sends after you." His fingers combed through her tangled hair. "I know a place, up near the Canadian border. Man owes me a favor, has a little spread where we could lay low for a while. If you'll have me, I'm not much for promises, Amelia, but I'll try. For you, I'll try." She rose up to kiss him again, tasting commitment in it. "That's all I ask." The storm cleared by the fourth day, leaving the world crystalline white. They packed carefully, Colt moving stiffly but determined, as they prepared to leave the cabin that had been their sanctuary. He pulled something from his saddlebag. "Here," he said, handing her a gun belt. "If you're riding with me, you do it proper." She strapped it on, the weight strange but reassuring. The Smith & Wesson sat heavy on her hip. "How do I look?" she asked. "Like trouble," he said with that rare smile that transformed his face. Beautiful trouble. They rode out into the pristine morning. Two figures against the white expanse. Behind them lay her old life. Ahead an uncertain future. But as Colt reached back to squeeze her hand where it rested on his waist, Amelia felt no fear. She'd traded safety for freedom, propriety for passion, and found herself in the exchange. The mountains rose around them like cathedral walls, and somewhere beyond them waited a life she'd choose for herself. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing with Colt would be. There would be more gunfights, more running, more nights wondering if dawn would bring death or deliverance. But as they rode higher into that endless sky, she knew she'd rather have one day of chosen danger with him than a lifetime of comfortable captivity. Love had found her in the most unlikely place, in the arms of a man who smelled of cordite and leather, who killed for money but would die for her. The old Amelia Winslow was buried in that cabin with her petticoats and pretensions. The woman who rode out was someone new, harder, freer, unafraid of the gun on her hip or the heart in her chest that beat for a scarred bounty hunter. Somewhere behind them, Vernon Halstead raged and plotted. Somewhere ahead, their future waited like an unsprung trap. But in this moment, riding through snow-covered pines with her arms around the man she loved, Amelia was exactly where she belonged. The cabin Colt had promised sat nestled in a grove of aspens, their white bark stark against the evergreens. Snow lay thick on the roof, and smoke curled from the chimney like a welcome sign. They'd ridden for 2 weeks through harsh country, dodging both the law and Halstead's hired guns, to reach this sanctuary. "Whose place is this?" Amelia asked as they dismounted, her legs stiff from the long ride. "Tom Brennan's. Saved his life in Deadwood few years back." Colt scanned the tree line, ever watchful. "He winters in California now. Told me I could use it if needed." The cabin was well stocked, preserved meats, sacks of flour and beans, even books on a rough shelf. After weeks of hard travel, it felt like a palace. Amelia walked through the rooms in wonder, touching furniture, testing the real bed with its thick quilts. "How long can we stay?" "Long as we need." Colt set his rifle by the door, hung his gun belt on a peg. "Nearest town's 3 days' ride. No one to bother us here." For the first time since fleeing New Grayston, Amelia felt her shoulders drop, tension bleeding away. She could stop looking over her shoulder, stop starting at every sound. Here, she could just be. The days took on a rhythm unlike anything she'd known. Mornings breaking ice on the water barrel, Colt teaching her to shoot properly in the meadow behind the cabin, afternoons maintaining their gear, her reading aloud while he cleaned weapons or mended tack, evenings by the fire, learning each other in ways that went beyond the physical. "Aim lower." Colt instructed as she fired at targets he'd set up. "You're fighting the recoil." The tin can exploded, and she whooped in triumph. He smiled, those rare smiles coming easier now, though his eyes still checked the horizon regularly. "I'm getting good at this," she said proudly. "Good enough. Takes years to get great." He adjusted her stance, hands on her hips. "But you've got instinct. That's what matters." She turned in his arms, the lesson forgotten. "Just instinct?" "Well," he murmured against her lips, "you've got other qualities too." Inside, as snow began falling again, they made love on the bearskin rug before the fire. Each time was discovery, learning the map of each other, the places that brought pleasure, the touches that brought peace. She traced his scars with the lips and fingers, replacing memories of violence with tenderness. He worshipped her body like a man who'd forgotten softness existed, relearning gentleness through her skin. "I could stay here forever," she said afterward, wrapped in quilts and his arms. "No, you couldn't." His voice held affectionate certainty. "Give you 6 months. You'd be climbing the walls. You're not built for hiding, Amelia. You're built for living. So are you." "Am I?" He stared at the ceiling. "Been so long since I did anything but survive. I'm not sure I remember how." "Then I'll teach you, like you're teaching me to shoot." He pulled her closer. "Deal." But even in their mountain paradise, reality intruded. Colt grew restless as weeks passed, taking longer rides to check their perimeter. His sleep became fitful, hand reaching for his gun at every night sound. "What's wrong?" Amelia asked one morning, finding him on the porch despite the freezing temperature. "Too quiet. Been here near a month without sign of trouble." He scanned the tree line. "In my experience, that means trouble's coming." She joined him, rifle in hand, his training taking hold. Maybe Halstead gave up. "Men like him don't give up. They just get meaner." He touched her cheek. "I need to ride to town, check for news. You'll be safe here for a few days." "I'm coming with you." "No. If there's paper on us, better I go alone. Can move faster, draw less attention." She wanted to argue, but saw the wisdom. 3 days, then I come looking." 3 days, he agreed, kissing her hard. "Keep the rifle close. Trust no one." Watching him ride away felt like losing a limb. She busied herself with chores, with target practice, with reading. But the cabin felt too empty, too quiet without his presence. On the second night, she woke to horses approaching. Her heart leaped. He was back early, but something felt wrong. Too many hoofbeats. She grabbed the rifle, checked the loads, positioned herself by the window. In the moonlight, she counted 4 riders, none with Colt's familiar silhouette. "Hello, the house," a voice called. "Looking for shelter from the storm." She stayed silent, rifle trained on the lead rider. "Come now, we know someone's there. Saw the smoke. Just need a place to warm up, maybe some coffee." Still she waited. Colt's lessons echoing. Silence is a weapon. Patience wins more fights than speed. One rider dismounted, approaching the door. "No need to be unfriendly, we're just—" The door exploded inward. Amelia fired, catching him center mass. He fell backward into the snow. The others dove for cover, returning fire that shattered windows, filled the air with splinters. "It's her!" someone shouted. "Halstead's runaway! Take her alive! He doubles the bounty for live delivery!" They rushed the cabin from 3 sides. Amelia fired methodically, Colt's training overriding panic. Another man fell, clutching his shoulder, but there were too many, too close. A figure crashed through the back window. She spun, fired, missed. His fist caught her temple, sending her reeling. The rifle fell from numb fingers. "Got her!" the man yelled, reaching for her. The Smith & Wesson cleared leather like Colt had taught her. 2 shots, point blank. The man's expression shifted from triumph to surprise as he crumpled. But the last attacker was already on her, knocking the pistol away, hands rough as he dragged her toward the door. She fought wildly, nails raking his face, teeth finding flesh. Then, Gunfire from outside. A familiar voice roaring her name. The man holding her jerked, red blooming across his chest. He fell, taking her down with him. Amelia! Colt burst through the doorway like an avenging angel. Gore splattered across his face, eyes wild. You hurt? She crawled from beneath the dead man, shaking. No, I'm okay. The words died as reaction set in. He caught her as she swayed, holding her tight. You did good. You did so good. Darling, it's over now. How did you know? Heard in town Halstead hired the Morrison gang. Rode like hell to get back. He surveyed the carnage, pride and pain warring in his eyes. 4 men. You held off 4 men alone. I had a good teacher, but as they stood among the dead, both knew their mountain idol was over. Come spring, someone would find the bodies. Word would spread. Their sanctuary had become a trap. We can't stay, she said quietly. No. He reloaded her weapons, handed them back. But there's something else. News from town. He pulled out a crumpled newspaper. Halstead's dead, shot in his own bank 3 days ago. Paper says it was a robbery, but... Man matching my description was seen leaving town that night. His eyes met hers. Wasn't me, Amelia. I was here with you. She studied his face, saw only truth. Then who? Don't know. Don't care. What matters is you're free. No bounty. No hunters. You can go anywhere. Be anyone. What about you? He smiled sadly. Still wanted in 2 territories. That won't change. She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down to her level. Then I guess you're stuck with me, Colt Devlin, because where you go, I go. Amelia. No, you don't get to decide for me. Not anymore. She gestured at the blood-stained floor. I've earned my place beside you, paid for it in lead and powder. He crushed her against him, face buried in her hair. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man. They left at dawn. Cabin burning behind them to destroy the evidence. Ahead lay uncertain trails. More running, more fighting. But as they rode into the rising sun, Amelia felt no fear. She'd found her place in this wild world, not as someone's daughter or prize, but as herself. A woman who could shoot straight, love hard, and stand beside the man who'd taught her both. The mountains fell away behind them, and the open plains beckoned. Somewhere out there was a future they'd build together, 1 bullet and 1 kiss at a time. The man stood in the doorway of the cabin like a specter from the past, his federal badge catching the lamplight. Marshal James Langtry was lean as a whip, with eyes like chips of flint and a reputation for always getting his man. Colt Devlin, he said pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. Been a long time. Amelia's hand inched toward her pistol, but Colt's slight gesture stopped her. They'd been in this cabin near the Colorado border for only 2 weeks, thinking themselves safe. She should have known. Safety was an illusion in their world. Langtry? Colt's voice was carefully neutral. Coffee's hot if you're interested. Don't mind if I do. The marshal entered, hanging his coat on a peg like an old friend visiting. His gun remained holstered, but his hand never strayed far from it. Mrs. Devlin, I presume? Or is it still Miss Winslow? It's neither, Amelia said coolly. Just Amelia will do. Fair enough. Langtry accepted the coffee Colt poured, settling into a chair with deceptive ease. You've led me quite a chase. Devlin, Montana, Wyoming, now here, must be tired of running. What do you want? Jim? Colt's use of the familiar name surprised Amelia. If you're here to arrest me, get on with it. Arrest you? Now why would I do that? Langtry sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Dead men can't be arrested. Amelia tensed. What are you talking about? Colt Devlin died 6 months ago in a shootout in Tucson. Says so right in the official report. Terrible tragedy. The marshal's eyes glinted with dry humor. Course, some might say a dead man's been awful active lately. But I'm not here about the past. Then why? Colt remained standing, ready for anything. Got a proposition. There's a man needs killing, and I need someone who doesn't officially exist to do it. I'm not an assassin. No, you're a bounty hunter. and I'm offering you the biggest bounty of your career." Langtry pulled out a photograph. Colonel Marcus Wade. Know the name? Colt's face darkened. Railroad baron, land grabber, murdering bastard who hides behind hired guns and bought judges. That's the one. Also happens to be building a private army out near Silver Creek. Planning something big, something that'll make the range wars look like Sunday socials. Langtry leaned forward. The government wants him stopped, but we can't move officially. Too many of his friends in high places. So you want me to do your dirty work? I want you to do what you do best. Bring in a wanted man. The marshal pulled out a document. Federal warrant for Wade's arrest on charges of treason. And if he resists, well, what's in it for us? Amelia asked, surprising both men. Langtry smiled. Smart woman. Full pardon for Colt. Clean slate in all territories. New identities if you want them. And $20,000. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling fire. Amelia could feel Colt thinking, weighing options. She knew what that kind of money could mean. A real future, a ranch somewhere. Peace. There's more, Langtry added. Wade's the one who ordered the raid that killed your wife. Devlin. Paid the Apache to hit specific ranches. Clear the land for his railroad. Colt went very still. You're lying. Got the papers to prove it. Testimony from one of his men we caught last year. Langtry set down his cup. I know you've tried to leave that life behind, but some ghosts need laying to rest. And if I say no, then I finish my coffee and ride out. But we both know Wade won't stop. Today it's Silver Creek. Tomorrow it's another town, another valley. More widows, more orphans. The marshal stood. I'll give you tonight to decide. I'm at the hotel in town. After he left, Amelia found Colt standing on the porch, staring at the stars. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, feeling the tension in his muscles. It's a trap, she said softly. Maybe, or maybe it's a chance to end things. All of it. You want to go after Wade. It wasn't a question. He turned in her arms. Sarah's been dead 7 years. Thought I'd made my peace with it. But knowing he ordered it, that she died for his greed, I understand. And she did. When do we leave? No, this is my fight. Amelia, my past to settle. Your past is our present. She touched his face. You think I'd let you walk into that viper's nest alone? After everything we've survived together. This is different. Wade has an army. It's suicide. Then we die together. But I'm betting on us living. We're harder to kill than most. She smiled fiercely. Besides, I've gotten pretty good with a rifle. Be ashamed to waste all that training. He crushed her against him. Stubborn. Impossible woman. That's why you love me. One of many reasons. He was quiet for a moment. If we do this, we do it smart. Scout the land. Plan every detail. And if it goes bad, it won't. But if it does, you run. Promise me. She said nothing, which was answer enough. They went inside, spread maps on the table, began planning. By dawn, they'd have a strategy. But tonight, there were other needs. They made love with desperate intensity, aware it might be their last time. Every touch was memorized, every whisper treasured. When passion was spent, they lay entwined, hands clasped like they could hold back fate through touch alone. Tell me about after, she whispered, when Wade's dead and we're free. Where do we go? North, maybe Canada. Find some land near water, build a cabin twice the size of this one. His fingers traced patterns on her skin. Raise horses, maybe children, if you want them. I want them, your children. Sons with your eyes, daughters with your courage. My courage, he laughed softly. Darling, you're the brave one. I'm just too stubborn to die. Same difference. She rose up to look at him. We're going to survive this, Colt. We've come too far to fail now. From your lips to God's ears. He pulled her down for a kiss. Though I suspect God stopped listening to me long ago, then I'll pray for both of us. Morning came too soon. Langtry waited at the hotel as promised. Maps and intelligence reports ready. Wade's compound sat in a box canyon, defended but not impregnable. 40 men, maybe 50, guard rotations, patrol patterns, everything they needed. When? Colt asked. New moon's in a week. Wade's planning to move against the settlements then. Hit him before he can hit them. We'll need supplies, ammunition, explosives, whatever you need. Langtry produced a bank draft. Government's deep pockets for this one. As they prepared to leave, the marshal caught Colt's arm. Devlin, that pardon's only good if you come back alive. Both of you. Noted. And one more thing. Might interest you to know Wade's been hunting you too. Seems he found out you survived. Knows you've been sniffing around his operations. He's got paper out on you from here to Mexico. Colt smiled coldly. Good. Saves me the trouble of surprising him. They rode out as the sun climbed high, 2 figures against the vast landscape. Behind them lay warm beds and quiet dreams. Ahead waited Colonel Marcus Wade and an army of killers. But as Amelia checked her rifle and adjusted her gun belt, she felt no fear, only cold purpose. Wade had taken Colt's first love, destroyed countless lives for profit. Now he would learn what vengeance looked like, delivered by a bounty hunter who'd already died once and a society girl who'd found her strength in gunsmoke and danger. The road to Silver Creek stretched out before them, dusty and long. At its end waited either death or freedom, but they'd face it as they'd faced everything else, together, weapons ready, love fierce as prairie fire. The hunt was on. 6 months had passed since Silver Creek. 6 months since Colt had put a bullet between Colonel Wade's eyes while his compound burned around them. 6 months of freedom that felt more like captivity with each passing day. Amelia stood in the doorway of their small house on the outskirts of Cedar Falls, watching the sun paint the sky crimson. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her belly, feeling the life growing within. The child Colt didn't know about. The child she hadn't found the courage to tell him about. He'd changed since Wade's death. The vengeance he'd sought for so long had left him empty, restless. He took long rides alone, returning with hollow eyes and whiskey on his breath. The nightmares came more frequently, not just of Sarah now, but of all the men he'd killed, all the blood he'd spilled. You're up early. She turned to find him dressed for travel, gun belt already strapped on. Her heart sank. Where this time? She asked quietly. Just riding. Need to clear my head. That's what you said last week. You were gone 3 days. He couldn't meet her eyes. This isn't the life you deserve. Amelia. Teaching school to farm kids, mending clothes, pretending to be someone you're not. I'm not pretending. This is who I am now. Who we are. No. His voice was rough. You're a wild thing playing house, and I'm a killer trying to be a farmer. We're fooling ourselves. She moved to him, taking his face in her hands. Look at me. Really look at me. When he finally met her gaze, she saw the torment there. The man who'd faced down armies couldn't face his own peace. I love you, she said simply. Isn't that enough? It should be. He pulled away. But every morning I wake up expecting gunfire. Every face in town could be someone with a grudge, a brother or son of someone I've killed. You think Langtry's pardon erased all that? Made all those ghosts disappear? So you're running? After everything we've survived? You're just giving up? I'm protecting you. The words exploded from him. Don't you understand? The only thing I've ever been good at is death. And death follows me. Amelia, sooner or later, it'll find us here, find you. She wanted to tell him then about the baby, use it to anchor him, but looking at the wildness in his eyes, she knew it would only drive him away faster. He'd leave to protect them both, and she'd never see him again. Then go, she said instead, voice steady despite her breaking heart. If that's what you need, go, but know this, I'll be here when you're ready to stop running from yourself. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, regret, love. He kissed her hard, desperate, then walked out without another word. She didn't watch him right away. Couldn't. An hour later, someone knocked at the door. Amelia opened it to find Marshal Langtry, looking older than when she'd last seen him. He's gone, isn't he? The marshal asked. How did you know? Because I know Colt Devlin. No men like him. War's easy for them. Peace is the real battle. He studied her face. How far along are you? Her hand went instinctively to her belly. 4 months, maybe 5. Does he know? No. Langtry sighed. May I come in? There's something you need to hear. Over coffee. He told her about Vernon Halstead's death. Not the story the papers had printed, but the truth. It was Wade who had him killed. Halstead was getting in the way of a land deal. Wade figured killing him and blaming it on Colt would solve 2 problems: remove an obstacle and put more pressure on a man he wanted dead. But why tell me now? Because there's more. Halstead had a brother, Samuel, mean as a snake and twice as twisted. He's been looking for you. Amelia. Blames you for Vernon's death. Says you corrupted him somehow. Man's not right in the head, and he's got money to spread around. Fear, an old companion she'd thought left behind, crept back in. He knows where I am. Not yet, but he's getting closer. That school where you teach. One of his men was asking questions there last week. She stood abruptly, pacing. I need to leave, tonight, or you could wait. Colt will come back. Amelia. Men like him always come back to what matters. And if Samuel finds me first, finds us. She touched her belly. I can't risk it. Langtry nodded slowly. There's a place, Montana territory, little town called Haven. Sheriff there owes me favors. You'd be safe until Colt gets his head straight. That night, Amelia packed what little they'd accumulated. The house that had felt like a prison to Colt had been her first real home, and leaving it hurt more than she'd expected. She left a letter for him, sealed with wax and tears. My darling Colt, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I don't love you. I love you more than breath itself, but because sometimes love means protecting what matters, even from ourselves. There's something I couldn't tell you, something that changes everything. Find me when you're ready to truly live, not just survive. Marshall Langtry knows where. Forever yours, Amelia. She traveled by stage, then train, watching the landscape change from prairie to mountain. Her body changed too, the child within making its presence known with kicks and turns. On quiet nights in boarding houses, she'd whisper to her belly about its father, the dangerous man with gentle hands, the killer who'd taught her to live. Haven proved to be aptly named, nestled in a valley between protective peaks. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business and the past stayed buried. Sheriff McKenna, a gruff man with kind eyes, set her up in a small cabin at the town's edge. Langtry says you can handle yourself, he said, eyeing the gun on her hip. But any trouble comes, you send word. This town protects its own. She became Amy Collins, a widow from back east. She took in sewing, helped at the general store, made a quiet life. The townspeople accepted her story without question, though she caught speculation in some eyes about a pregnant woman alone. Winter came early, October snow blanketing the valley. She was tending the fire one evening when she heard it, hoofbeats approaching through the storm. Her hand found her pistol, body tense despite her bulk. The door burst open, bringing wind and snow and... Colt! His name came out as a sob. He stood in her doorway like a vision, thinner than before, face gaunt with hard travel. His eyes went immediately to her swollen belly, and he swayed like he'd been shot. Amelia! Her name was a prayer on his lips. Is it yours? Ours? She struggled to her feet. How did you find me? Langtry caught up with me in Denver. Told me I was the biggest fool God ever made. Told me other things too, about Samuel Halstead. His face darkened. I've been tracking him for 2 weeks. Lost him near here. He's coming? Not anymore. The flat finality in his voice said everything. It's done. All of it. Every ghost laid to rest. Every debt paid. I'm done running. Amelia, from them, from you, from myself. She wanted to go to him but held back, needing more. And tomorrow, next week, when the walls close in and the past whispers, he crossed to her in 2 strides, dropping to his knees before her, hands gentle on her belly. Then I remember what matters. You, this child, the future we're building. He looked up at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. I've been a fool, pushed away the only good thing in my life because I couldn't believe I deserved it. Can you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. She sank down beside him, arms around his neck. You came back. You always come back. Always. He swore. No more running. Whatever comes, we face it together. Outside, the storm raged. But inside their cabin, peace finally found them. They sat by the fire, planning a future that seemed possible now. The ranch Langtry had mentioned, raising horses and children, building something that would last. When her labor came 3 weeks later, Colt was beside her, steady as a rock. And when their daughter emerged, squalling and perfect, he wept like she'd never seen. What'll we call her? He asked, cradling the tiny form with hands that had dealt so much death, now holding new life. Hope, Amelia said without hesitation. Hope, Sarah Devlin. He kissed her then, their daughter between them, and she tasted redemption on his lips. The man who'd found her on a train, who'd smelled of blood and cordite, now smelled of sawdust from the cradle he'd built and talcum from the baby he'd bathed. Outside their window, spring was coming to Montana, ice breaking on the rivers, green pushing through snow. And in a small cabin where a bounty hunter had finally hung up his guns for good, a new story was beginning. One of healing, of growth, of love stronger than any shadow from the past. The wild days were behind them now. Ahead lay something harder and more rewarding. A life together, ordinary and extraordinary in equal measure. And as Amelia watched Colt rock their daughter to sleep, humming tunelessly, she knew they'd found what they'd been seeking all along. Home. The Devlin Inn stood proud against the Montana sky, its timber walls weathered to silver gray, windows glowing warm against the approaching dusk. 5 years had transformed the small cabin into a thriving way station, serving travelers on the road between Helena and the Canadian border. Amelia stood on the wide porch, watching their daughter Hope chase chickens through the yard, her dark hair flying behind her like a banner. "Mama, look," Hope called, holding up a blue speckled egg. "The new hen laid one." "Careful with it, sweetheart. We'll need it for tomorrow's baking." The sound of hammering drew her attention to the new stable Colt was building. He'd taken to carpentry with the same focused intensity he'd once applied to tracking outlaws. His hands, which had once been quick on the draw, now crafted furniture and mended roofs. The transformation still took her breath away sometimes. "Mrs. Devlin?" A young voice interrupted her thoughts. Tommy Morrison, the teenager they'd hired to help with the horses, stood holding a telegram. This came from town. Her blood chilled. Telegrams rarely brought good news, but when she read it, she smiled. Marshal Langtry was passing through next week, bringing his new wife to meet them. That evening, as they sat down to supper, Colt noticed her quiet mood. "What's troubling you?" "Nothing's troubling me. Just thinking how different life is now." She gestured around the dining room, where guests chatted over her cooking. "Remember that first meal we shared? Beans and salt pork by a campfire. You said it smelled wonderful." He smiled at the memory. "I knew then you were different. No complaining, no tears, just gratitude for warm food and safe company." "I was terrified," she admitted, "but more terrified of going back. And now I can't imagine any other life." After Hope was tucked into bed, they sat by the fire as was their custom. Colt was teaching himself to read better, working through the books Amelia had collected. She mended clothes or worked on the account books, finding peace in these simple domesticities. "We had a visitor today while you were in town," Colt said suddenly. "Man asking about rooms, but he was looking at me strange, like he knew me." Her hands stilled. "Trouble?" "Don't think so. Seemed more curious than anything. Said he'd heard about the inn from folks in Helena." He paused. "He'll be back tomorrow for lunch. Want to size him up proper?" The next day, Amelia was serving the noon meal when the stranger appeared, middle-aged, well-dressed, with the bearing of a former soldier. His eyes found Colt immediately, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe respect. "You're Colt Devlin," the man said. It wasn't a question. "I am. And you are?" "Thomas Brennan. You saved my brother Tom's life in Deadwood. He told me if I ever needed help, to find you." Colt relaxed fractionally. "Tom's a good man. What brings you here?" "A proposition. But perhaps we could speak privately?" They moved to Colt's small office. Amelia brought coffee, her instincts alert. Brennan waited until she'd gone before speaking. "I represent a group of ranchers near Billing. We're having trouble with rustlers. But it's more than that. Someone's organizing them, turning cattle theft into a military operation. We need someone who understands both sides of the law." "I'm not a lawman anymore," Colt said firmly. "Or a bounty hunter. I run an inn." "I know. That's why we want you. Not to hunt or kill, but to investigate. Find out who's behind it. Gather evidence we can take to federal marshals." Brennan leaned forward. "We're not asking you to pick up your guns again, Mr. Devlin. We're asking you to use your knowledge to help honest folks protect their livelihood." Colt was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, he could see Hope playing with her doll on the porch, Amelia hanging laundry in the sunshine, his family, his peace. "I'll think on it," he said finally. That night, he discussed it with Amelia as they prepared for bed. "What do you think?" "I think you miss being useful in that way," she said carefully. "I see it sometimes when riders pass through with news of troubles. Part of you wants to help. But I promised no more of that life." She took his face in her hands. "That life was violence for money, running from shadows. This would be different. Using your skills to protect, not destroy. To build something better. And if it goes bad, if I have to, then we face it together. Like always." She kissed him softly. "You're not the same man who found me on that train. Colt, that man couldn't have built this place, raised our daughter, made a home. Trust who you've become." He pulled her close, marveling as always that this refined woman had chosen him. "What did I do to deserve you? You gave me freedom, taught me strength, loved me when I was nobody." She smiled against his chest. "Small things, really." 2 days later, Brennan returned for Colt's answer. They worked out terms, investigation only. 2 weeks at most. Good pay, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the handshake between honest men. The promise to help without becoming what he'd been. Colt left the next morning, but this time was different. No sneaking away. No hollow eyes. He kissed his family goodbye openly. Promised to write. Told Hope to help her mother with the guests. "Bring me something pretty." "Papa?" Hope demanded. "I'll bring you stories," he promised. Much better than pretty things. Amelia watched him ride away without fear. This wasn't the desperate flight of a haunted man, but the purposeful journey of one who'd found his place. He'd return because he had something to return to. The inn ran smoothly in his absence. Amelia had become a shrewd businesswoman, keeping accurate books, managing supplies with efficiency learned from years of making do with little. Hope helped where she could, charming guests with her bright chatter and fearless nature. Marshal Langtry arrived as promised. His new wife, a surprisingly young schoolteacher from Kansas, who peppered Amelia with questions about frontier life. "Is it true you once shot it out with 4 men?" she asked breathlessly over tea. "That was a long time ago," Amelia said, uncomfortable with the admiration in the younger woman's eyes. "I'm just an innkeeper now." "Don't let her fool you," Langtry interjected. "Woman's got more steel in her spine than most men I know. Colt's lucky to have her." "We're lucky to have each other," Amelia corrected. 10 days later, Colt returned as the sun set, dusty but whole. Hope flew into his arms while Amelia waited, reading his face. He smiled, and she knew it was good. "It's done," he said simply over dinner. "Found their organization, documented everything. Federal marshals are moving in now. Should be over within the week." "And," she prompted, knowing there was more. "And Brennan's group wants to put me on retainer, advisory work only, helping ranchers protect themselves, reviewing security. investigating problems before they require violence. He met her eyes. Regular pay, no gunplay, home most nights. What do you think? I think you found a way to be who you were and who you are. She reached across the table to take his hand. I'm proud of you. Later, as they sat on the porch watching stars emerge, hope asleep between them, Colt spoke quietly. I never thought I'd have this peace, purpose, family. He looked at Amelia. You saved me. You know, in every way a man can be saved. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what love does. The night wind carried the scent of coming rain, promising good growing weather for the garden Amelia had planted. Inside the inn, guests settled for the night, secure in the hospitality of this unlikely couple who'd built something beautiful from ashes and gun smoke. Colt lifted Hope, carrying her to bed while Amelia banked the fires and locked the doors. Simple tasks, domestic rituals that meant more than all the gold in California. When he returned, he pulled Amelia against him, and they stood together in the doorway of their improbable kingdom. No regrets? He asked. Not one. She answered, except maybe that I can't shoot quite as well as I used to. Lack of practice. Well, he laughed, the sound rich and real. I can fix that. Target practice tomorrow? It's a date, Mr. Devlin. They went inside, leaving the night to settle over their inn, their stable, their life built on the unlikely foundation of a runaway bride and a bounty hunter who'd smelled of blood. In the morning, there would be bread to bake and guests to tend, a daughter to raise and a business to run. But tonight, there was only them, two souls who'd found each other in violence and learned to love in peace. The West was changing, growing civilized, but in a small inn in Montana, the wild spirit lived on, tempered by wisdom, gentled by love, but never fully tamed. And that was exactly as it should be. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Amelia and Colt's journey from that dangerous first meeting to their hard-won happiness. Where are you listening from today? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to connect with fellow Western romance fans from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more tales of love and adventure in the American frontier. And let me know your thoughts on Amelia and Colt's story. Until next time, partners.